Hello, my name is Eric Wells. I'm here to talk to you a little bit today about Middle Egyptian, which most people know as hieroglyphic. By hieroglyphic, we mean that we're using pictures to represent ideas and sounds. Here we're going to help you and show you some of the more common Egyptian signs and signs that some of the lost viewers might actually see. One of the more common signs we have here, the Ankh sign, represents life. Now, what it actually is a bit unclear, and people actually debate about this. Some people think it might be a sandal strap, perhaps. It has the phonetic value of Ankh, and this is a sign that those of you who are at all familiar with Egyptian art have probably recognized. It's often something that's being held by gods, or something that's being given to the king. So for those of you who might actually be familiar with art from the Amarna period, where the pharaoh Akhenaten ruled, you'll often see the symbol of the sun disk with an outstretched arm holding an Ankh and giving it to the king, who's usually seated upon his throne. Now, this is obviously a very crude representation of that, but it's this idea of the god actually giving life. And this is something that you see represented in Egyptian art. That's why you'll often have figures holding these Ankh symbols within their hands. Another common sign you have is this one, which is actually a vulture, which represents an aleph, which is kind of an ah sound. We also have this sign, which is a door bolt, which is something like a Z sound. We have an S, which is represented by a bolt of cloth. Another bird sign we have that's very common is a quail chick, a very small chick, which represents a kind of oo sound. We also have a snake. This particular snake is a horned viper, which has the phonetic value of F. Something else you need to know about Egyptian is how to actually read these. Now, the nice way you can really easily tell which way you're supposed to read is by looking at the faces of certain signs and then reading into them. So in this case, here you have an M symbol. And then here, we have symbols for the sky. So this is saying in the sky. And this is read the same way in English from left to right. However, the Egyptians weren't nearly so rigid as to how they would write things. So you can also write this way. Where you can read it moving from the right to the left. And you can also have these things written vertically, our sky symbol underneath it. So in this way, we're actually reading right into it, but then also down as well. And then, of course, you can do the same thing from the other side and read this, or I should rather say write this, in this way. So that's the easy trick. Look for some sort of animate object, a man, look for a bird, a snake, and then just kind of read into their face. Going back to the writing itself, we've been dealing with these kind of beautiful signs. Here, for instance, we have an owl, which has a phonetic value of M. Now, this sign is very common because it's a preposition which can mean into, as well as lots of other things, and it's used as one of those phonetic complements I mentioned earlier. But you can imagine to take the time to draw this every time you wanted to maybe write a letter or to write a receipt would have taken a really long time. And this is where we actually see the Egyptian system developing different scripts. So what we see is that this sign then becomes this. You can see it's kind of retaining the face and then this body. And in this, we see is a hieratic sign. And a hieratic simply means something like, it's cursive hieroglyphs is a way to think about it. They become abbreviated as the language moves on. And as you go throughout time, then we move into another language phase, Demotic, which is even a more abbreviated hieratic. And eventually, we get to the Coptic language, which is actually the Egyptian language, but they adopt the Greek alphabet to be able to write it. So eventually, this is written with an M, similar to as we have today. So this is a kind of evolution of some of the kind of signs that you might see. One of the things that's very interesting about hieroglyphs and about the hieroglyphic script in Egyptian is this is really a doorway into an ancient culture. And really one of the best ways you can understand a society, ancient or modern, is to learn their language and to learn about the culture itself and their own words. So I would encourage anyone who has an interest in ancient Egypt to actually go and then try to expand through learning hieroglyphs on their own or at a university.